The Story Grows. I'm Brad Patton. Today I'm stoked to finally share my interview with Sumo Cyco frontwoman Skye Sweetnam. The new Sumo Cyco record, Neon Void, is out this Friday. Skye talks about the ups and downs of being a pop act on a major label, going from opening for Britney Spears to touring in a van, the musical and visual inspirations for Sumo Cyco, leaving label life to be an independent band, the themes on Neon Void, and so much more. This was such a delightful chat, and it was great to get to revisit it in the edit as Skye and I had talked over the summer. Make sure you add Neon Void to your Friday listening plans, and if you like the record and dig the interview, check out the band's website and their merch vinyl CD options. Thanks so much for listening to As the Story Grows. If this is your first time checking out the podcast, welcome. You can find links in our show notes or at asthestorygrows.com for our Discord server, our Patreon page, and our mailing list. And if you know somebody who might enjoy this interview or band or the podcast as a whole, I would love it if you shared it with them. Enjoy today's conversation with Skye Sweetnam from Sumo Cyco.
Don't you know if you stoop low, then they stoop lower? Tragedy of the commons like a movie thriller. How's your head when you lay it down upon your pillow? Unsettling, invading, oh my control. Prove it to me right now, prove it.
You at today?
Just outside Washington, D.C.
Oh, nice. Cool.
Where are you? You're up in Canada, right?
Yeah. We're just like between Niagara Falls and Toronto.
Okay, nice.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Before I dive in and ask you any questions, I'm going to tell a story. So go on this journey with me.
Okay.
In 2019, took my children to Walt Disney World for the first time. You know, you're at the resorts, they play music in the backgrounds, and there's a, pop punk version of Part of Your World playing in the background, which is very nice. I enjoy it. Put it on the playlist for my kids. It's like, listen to it a bunch. Because I work with like Napalm Records a lot, I have the last Sumo Cyco record. It wasn't until last week when we booked this interview that I made the connection.
Oh, no way.
That it is the same singer, that it is you on both those projects.
Isn't it crazy? It was just like one crazy life living both of these worlds, right?
Yeah. I was like, why does that name sound familiar? Why? Oh, that's why.
Oh my gosh. That's hilarious.
It's so
well,
funny.
that's cool. It's cool that you picked out the Part of Your World version. That was a good one.
Yeah. Let's start there, kind of the middle of your life, beginning of your career. What kind of led you in that, teeny bop, pop punk world? And kind of, did you always, as a second part, did you kind of always know you wanted to do like a band or something different later in life?
Yeah, no, I started my music career pretty young. I was about 12 years old when I started professionally recording. I did my first demo, and it was all because of the encouragement of a local music teacher. So I always thought, like, I loved singing. I loved performing. I was in like all the school plays as a kid and stuff, but I got to really give credit to them, because without them kind of showing me the path to take in order to become like a professional recording artist, I think I would have just been doing after school programs until like I graduated school, and then would have looked for like, okay, how do you maybe make this more of a career? But they took me under their wing, showed me what it's like to be in a professional recording studio. Did vocal lessons, obviously, and that kind of stuff. And it was just natural at that time in my life. If you think of like a 12-year-old growing up in the early 2000s, who's big at the time is like all the pop boy bands, the Britney Spears, Christina's, that was my world. I grew up, with Disney. So all those songs and things were like my life up until that point. So it just felt really natural that I that was the music that I went to originally. And then I found this really cool producer. He was about 21 when I met him, and I was 13. So we were kids.
Yeah.
And we wrote this record called Noise from the Basement in his parents' basement. And it was right when digital music making was kind of on the forefront. Like most people were going to full studios still in order to record, but he knew how to play every instrument. He had his laptop and he could like figure it out himself. And it was like the coolest thing to like skip school and like work on these songs. So I released my first record in 2004. There was like I had a whirlwind of an experience getting signed to Capitol Records when I was 15 and toured with Britney Spears, which was an insane, like my second tour I'd ever been on. So that's like a crazy experience in itself. But it was through that experience when I had to audition a band. So we're like, okay, you're going on tour. Like you need to have like a band. You can't just play by yourself. And I met a bunch of these guys that were older, way more kind of like been through a bunch of bands themselves. They had been through, you know, playing different tours and clubs. And I just thought that the idea of like being with your buddies, like being with your friends and like just like hitting the road, you know, like get in the van, let's go. I was like, that's so cool. And even though here I am, you know, signed to Capitol Records, like, you know, getting flights all over the place to do different things. I'm going, you know, I would love to hang out with like my friends and go in a van and go across the country. Like that sounds like so much fun. So there was this, you know, and I think everyone has it who's in music, like you romance the idea of like hitting the road, being out with your buddies and just like going club to club. And I always wanted to have that experience. And then Matt, who is my guitarist in the band, we ended up jamming, collaborating, and he ended up being, you know, he's my right-hand man here in the band. So we've known each other since for years. And it wasn't until like years later after my kind of pop career died down that we decided to like collaborate on something new, which was kind of born into Sumo Cyco.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is there I don't know if freedom's the right word, or to go from, you know, pop music, you know, superstardom, you never reached that level, but like signed to Capitol Records touring with Britney Spears, like that's a different level than like a band on the road, just like, you know, please let people buy our t-shirts this week. Like,
oh yeah.
Does it fulfill that dream? Is there some, I don't know, that first time you hit the road, are you just like, oh, this is not as great as I thought it was? Or is it just like, this is better because, you know, there's not some suit, you know, controlling everything. And it's just like this pure excitement and passion.
There's a mix of emotions. So when I put out my first record, it was like quite an experience, right? We were funded by, you know, Capitol Records, which, you know, they're one of the biggest record labels in the world. Yeah. So you're pretty much got the gold mine there. And then we were still in the era where CDs were selling. So there was still like this optimism about the industry. We weren't trying to battle like, you know, all the streaming stuff. And, you know, we were out with like one of the biggest acts on the planet. So like everything was really like, probably like put myself in a pretty lucky predicament to even have that experience. But then by the time I wrote my second record in LA and was ready to release the second record, so much had changed. It was Napster had taken over. You know, they were really, really worried. The industry was super, super worried about the changes that were happening with the digital, you know, streaming world. And they had decided at the record label to like literally redo their entire like roster of employees. So like first I got the notice that the president was, you know, leaving, and then it was the marketing director and then the A&R. And mind you, all these people were the people that believed in me and my project and had been with me through this whole journey. So I'm like, oh no, what's going to happen? So essentially, by the time I got my second record, was literally ready to be mastered. And they told me, you know, like it's pause. Yeah. We're doing major shifts at the label. We're going to do a recalibration of everything. And, you know, good luck, but you're just kind of sitting on the shelf, or they call it getting shelved, right? So you don't own your material, so you can't release it without their permission. So you're just kind of in this limbo that as like, a 19-year-old who's like hungry to take on the world is just torture. I'm like, you just want me to sit here and wait for you? Like, this ain't happening. Yeah. So I figured out a little way around the system. So I knew that in Canada, where we're from, and other places around the world, they have, partner labels that are under the same umbrella as Capitol. At the time was EMI Records. Yeah. So they can essentially easily license the music from one territory to the other. So I was able to convince the Canadian label and the Japanese version of the label to let me still release the album. But then when I went on tour, I was like, okay, I'm coming back to Canada. That's cool. But now I'm just being funded by the Canadian aspect. And so they don't have the money for the big tour bus. So here I am, 19 years old, had to hire a whole new band because I couldn't afford the wages that I had previously given the other guys. So I had to hire a whole new band. We're in like a Dodge Caravan with the drums in the back and like a keyboard down the middle of the aisle, driving up to like Northern Ontario. And I remember we hired a tour manager to do most of the driving, and he taps me on the shoulder and I'm like squished in the back of the Dodge Caravan with like 6 other people. He's like, Skye, it's getting too late. I'm really tired. I need you to drive. And I'm like, mind you, I'm like, paying for the whole thing, need to sing tomorrow. And I'm like 19, everyone's way older than me. And I'm like, okay, fine, if that's what we need to do. So really, really early on, I had that, I had to make a choice. I was either going to give up on music and be like, well, it's not as nice as I used to be in a tour bus, or I could be like, let's do it. Let's push through and figure out how to do this. And it really humbled me, which I think I needed. I think everyone who gets a lot of success, especially super early on in their careers or lives, if they don't have a few moments that kind of bring them down to earth, I think you can kind of just turn into kind of an asshole, for lack of a better term, where you think the world is conspiring for your success. So you kind of need to have moments where you have to kind of just kind of look around you and be like, okay, this is the circumstance I got into. How am I going to tackle this? And from that point on, I had kind of got the taste of the road, and I kind of learned how to run the band a little bit, how I had to budget everything and all the logistics that kind of had to be planned. And then moving into Sumo Cyco is okay, well, now I'm just going to cut all the middlemen out and we're going to start from scratch. Yeah. And a lot of people thought that because I had that initial success that there were some easy doors to open for me, which it is not the case, because the people that I was interacting with were on completely different levels and genres, and it just wasn't the same types of doors I could knock on. So I had to really start as if we were starting out brand new.
Yeah. And even if you could try to knock down those doors, like you said, everybody at major labels turns over so much, in the 20 plus years since that first record came out, the music industry is not the same. Not
at all. Yeah, not at all. And everybody, who used to have a job in A&R and things like that, that's not as much in demand, because now they've got algorithms figuring out, what artist is spiking on this platform. And that's how they're going to decide who, they take on or whatever. So there's it's completely different now. And I kind of feel, super grateful that I was able to experience some of that world. It was just a cool time, cool experience. And I don't regret it.
Yeah. When you and Matt decided to start Sumo Cyco, did you have any North Stars musically as to what you were hoping for? Or was it just kind of figuring out through the writing process?
Yeah. So I think after this whole ordeal, Matt and I kind of for a few years, we didn't really stay in touch. We weren't really, there was a lot of other external circumstances, but I had kind of gone on with my own solo career. He had his own band. And then we kind of reconnected, and he played me this band from the UK called Skin Dread. and very new metal, but like Benji, the lead singer, has this like Padawan Welsh style that is very like his own thing over top of these like this metal music, this metal rock band.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh man, I love how they can mix that like dance, like the dance hall vibes with that heavy music. And I was super inspired by that, coming from like a childhood where I did dance classes and loved to move my body, but I was so intrigued and loved like heavy music. And I was like, ooh, there's a way to merge those two. That's pretty cool. So I was like heavily inspired by that band. And I have credited them throughout, you know, our trajectory is one of the real moments that I kind of looked at Matt and was like, oh, we should start something with this vibe. And there's a few other bands I really, really loved that I remember in that time. A lot of UK influence. There's a band called Skunk and Nancy that we loved a few of their songs. There's this band, oh my gosh, we heard them on like a soundtrack to like the ATV, the franchise that has like the driving games. Mm-hmm. And we heard the song and I thought it was like a Japanese band. Then I realized it was like this really cool Norwegian band, Animal Alpha. And they were just like, I think had quit being a band by the time I even discovered them. But like they had this record that I really loved. And it's like these obscure references, but then we also have our history of who each of us are. Matt started in punk bands, like really grew up in the punk scene, very influenced, did like a reggae rock project. So very influenced by bands like The Police. You know, I grew up in musical theater, so I always have this like character-y musical theater vibe. And then I like grew up in the pop era. And then we both kind of found metal and progressive music really interesting. And we would go down that rabbit hole together. So we had like a lot of different influences when we started out. But yeah, I do think that I got to give credit to Skindred as being one of the CDs that, you know, he burned for me. And I was like, oh, this is really cool. And then to be able to collaborate with Benji years later on one of our songs called Move Mountains was a pretty amazing full circle moment, having been like so inspired by him.
Yeah. Yeah, one of the things I've noticed about this band is the visual aesthetic and how much costumes and, you know, whether it's you're dyeing your hair or doing something like matters. Have you noticed that's become more important, especially I think post-pandemic, with how much YouTube has overtaken the music industry?
Yeah, I've always been a huge fan of YouTube. I remember even when I did my second record, when I was talking about going around in the van, I remember me and my two friends stayed up 24 hours straight because back then the algorithm was a little bit easier to figure out. And we knew that if we just got as many views in as short amount of time as we humanly could, that we might be able to get the main page of YouTube, which we did accomplish with a DIY video we did. And I was so, so proud that we were able to do that. And it weirdly like was able to sustain my fan base through all these ups and downs of my career, like my professional, you know, career with, you know, companies and working in the industry. There was something I quickly realized about, no. They're all middlemen. Like all you need to do is really connect with the audience. And YouTube just like gave me that pretty early on I think I started my YouTube channel like pretty early. I think YouTube had only been around for like a couple years, and I jumped in and I was like, yeah, you can just like literally post something and then your fans can see it like right away. And you don't need to have to like get permission or, you know, spend hours like worrying about like all these, you know, different people weighing in. And I thought that was like so empowering as a young artist. And that always stuck with me. So when I started Sumo Cyco, I was like, okay, all we have to do is just release a song and then a video and then a song and then a video. And we just got to, you know, get people in. And that's how we're going to kind of grow back a little bit of like, see who likes us, stick it to the wall and see. So when we first started the project, we were very adamant that we weren't going to release a record. We were just going to keep putting out singles. Mm-hmm. We were adamant that it wasn't even a live project at that point. We were just like, this is just like a video project that we record songs and put them out. But then as we kind of started to build, we were like, okay, we do miss playing live. Like, let's try a few shows, and started getting more into that world, started playing like local festivals and things like that. And then, and then just kept doing the video thing. And then even when we realized we were starting to try to get like some PR and things, and it just kept coming up, people would be like, well, we need something to buy. Like, we need, like, are you going to sell these singles? Like, are they going to be compiled into one like piece or an EP or something? And we're like, okay, I guess we need to like think about like a body of work. So then we finally got kind of back into doing the album thing. But at the beginning, it was just like, just single, and videos was just like our plan, you know?
Yeah. It's fascinating how much bands like the allure, and it makes sense to do singles, but there's something about the album that like I think people just keep coming back to, whether it's fans or bands, or it's like we have to do something. Even bands are like, we're just going to put out singles, and then it's like, here's our new album.
I think it's, you know, it's that centerpiece, and I think it makes sense, you know, and like it takes a bunch together, and it makes a nice, beautiful vinyl that you can have with the picture and all that stuff. So like, I'm back on board with the records, but at the time, I think it just really made sense in that era, and to just build ourselves up rather than worrying about a release. We were just like, we just need to get to the people. We just need to show what we got and kind of see what works, you know?
Yeah. Last record, Initiation, came out on Napalm Records, as I said. What led you to Napalm, and was that just a single album deal? It appears this new record is back to being self-released.
Mm-hmm. So we met back a few years ago. We met Des Fafara and his wife Anastasia. Des sings in Devil Driver. I'd been in Cold Chamber, and his projects that he's been on recently are through Napalm. So he was managing us for a while, and that was kind of the connection that led us down the Napalm road. And we were we were really intrigued, you know, with trying like a metal label, being kind of like an indie, you know, self-release band for so many years. We were like, I wonder like what adventure we can go on with this. So had like a crazy experience, because with the record Initiation, we had crowdfunded that album. Mm-hmm. So we'd already kind of had the funds, but we were kind of looking for more so like some help with PR, reaching a new audience. And obviously like Napalm has like 2 million YouTube subscribers. So that was like a huge audience that it got us like exposed to, which was great. So went on that journey for a bit. And then things just kind of didn't work out for whatever reason with Des. And then we kind of realized that trying to sign another deal with Napalm, we were kind of not really it wasn't really making financial sense for how much work we take on ourselves. You know, we do a lot as an independent band, as far as like the workload of, you know, the art direction, the videos. We run our own online store, and we sell most of our products. Even when we were with Napalm, most of the CDs and vinyl we were selling was direct to fan. So we knew that it was, you know, helping getting the word out for sure, but we were also like, okay, like we're pulling a lot of the weight here. So I think then we decided for the next one, just with contracts and stuff, that it was going to be more in our favor to do our own label. And we found, you know, another kind of great team and partnerships in order to get some PR and some funding and all this stuff. And it took a few years to kind of reconfigure everything, but I feel like we've got a great team now. And and then just decided, you know what, we've got the knowledge. I've been around the block a few times, and so like I know what needs to be done, and it's just about executing. And you know, and I've always been a big advocate too of like artists realizing, you know, and seeing through some of the tricks that sometimes can be played by thinking like, oh, I need a label in order to like make it, you know? And sometimes, yes, you need certain skills, but sometimes you can just hire out for those certain skills. And it's so important these days for artists to be able to retain rights to their music, to retain rights to their intellectual property, and to be able to, for years down the line, like that's so important to your overall income. If you're going to, you know, try to swim in this crazy industry, you need every penny you can, you know, you need to keep your hands on it. So always trying to think through everything as smart as I can to really think about how we can continue to survive as an independent band.
New album's called Neon Void. Where did this title and kind of what was inspiring you in the writing process of this record?
Well, this record, it spans a lot of years. So some of these songs, I feel like we wrote like right after initiation all the way up to now. So that it's been quite a process.
Yeah.
We've written more songs than we ever have before narrowing it down. You know, typically Matt and I being like, you know, living together and having full-time access to our home studio, it's like the first, 12 songs we write, done, record, you know? But we were really encouraged by our management to like really try to like hone in on the best of the best material. We even went to like a bunch of different kind of potential collaborators and things. And some things were kind of just not working out. So there was kind of like these false starts. We were kind of waiting to maybe work with some people and then we never ended up doing it. And at the end of the day, I like learned also a lot of lessons about just like being, just being a leader in knowing what I want to accomplish instead of feeling like somebody else has got to give me that validation of like, this is good. Like sometimes you have to just know like this is what I want to do. Like, and so many times I think, through the ups and downs of being in this industry, you're kind of just like, I constantly feel like I'm treading water, trying to figure this out. This is new. The algorithm's new over here. I've got to run over here and do this. And sometimes all I want is just that like almost like person saying like, you're doing a good job. That song's really great. Just like keep going. So I'm always like looking for that validation, like looking everywhere, like where should I swim next? What's going on? And then like recently I realized like sometimes you just have to be like, you know what, I've got to make the best decision I can make for me. And nobody really knows what direction to go in. Yeah. It's all kind of a crapshoot. So I think there's a bit of that and overthinking going on in my head. And then also just recovering from the fact that like initiation came out in the pandemic. We didn't really get to tour it right after. So our tours were kind of delayed like a couple years after. So we were kind of going through the initiation like touring circuit, which kind of took extra long by the time we kind of got back into like our heads into like the writing and creative side. But as far as like lyrically, it's pretty dark. Like I feel like it's a lot about fighting the external forces and rabbit holes that I could get into in my own brain or overthinking certain things. And someone brought up the other day, like neon void, like what does that sound like? That sounds like a cell phone, right? Like it's like this void you can get sucked into. It's got all these pretty colors and all these amazing things you can do, but it can also take your life away from you if you get too sucked in. You know what I mean? It's like, I think of it as like a Pandora's box in some ways. It's like, I'll go down like these rabbit holes and stuff on the internet of learn. I love learning. So I'm like trying to suck in all this stuff, but then I'm like, holy shit, like the world is so dark and there's all these problems everywhere. And like, how are we going to fix it? And my brain starts going off in this, what I consider like these clouds over my head, like doom and gloom, like everything is going to be like, it's going to be destroyed and destructive. That everything's going to get worse. Nothing's going to get better. And those were the two kind of characters that I felt like followed me around this whole record. And it's almost like I'm hypnotized by that idea of like, I want to know this truth. I want to know more. But sometimes that can like take you out of the moment and living in your day to day and just like being appreciative for what you have and like, just living in the moment. So I felt like, I think that one of the big themes really is just kind of getting lost in your own like overthinking thoughts, letting the negative stuff win, letting those outside influences, like what the news is saying every day, kind of like inform my day-to-day life. And it was just becoming like so much. So I felt like that was and just like the idea of being in this crazy world that you don't really know which way's up or down in the music industry or which way to go. Like I was saying, this like indecision of which way to go. So the imagery that I'm using is kind of like a maze in the music videos. I always love to have like a visual theme that I work on in each album. So it's kind of like my journey from like getting through my brain to find like peace and find like empowerment and confidence at the end of this crazy journey through this shape-shifting maze that you never know what's around the corner. And life throws a lot of curveballs at you. And the older you get, I think sometimes you don't realize like all these things can just like pop up, whether that's, family stuff that you never thought was going to happen, whether it's like, just the world changing, like the pandemic caught us all off guard. And you just have to kind of realize that like you got to persevere through all of it and that you can't let that kind of like, I don't know, suck you into the negativity.
Yeah. Yeah. I like your description, and I look at the artwork. It's you like coming out of the neon void, and like, is there like symbolism to like the little artwork in the kind of colorful circle you're coming out of? There's like guys in a suits at like a car and a fence, right? Like,
yeah. So I always love to try to put like little Easter eggs and stuff. So when we were doing that cover, I wanted to have like, so Oscar and Matt, are like on the stairs kind of going around the outside. And we had 2 of our videos completed when that cover was being made. So I put like some, textures of like these branches and then this villain claw kind of coming from the villain's video. And then there's a couple objects like the fence that I'm working on for the next video. So it's kind of like little like hints of all the different things that are happening in this world that are kind of making up this void. And I kind of think of it as like all of our videos that I've done thus far, I always fans know that it takes place in Cyco City, which is like our crazy world that we've made up where anything goes. And it's like really like an alternate universe that you can just like take a portal through and you end up in Cyco City. But I describe this album as kind of taking place in like purgatory between the real world and Cyco City. Like you're not in the dream world yet, and you're not really in reality. You're kind of in this distorted middle space that you kind of have to make your way through. And so that's kind of like the vision behind some of the artwork, but hopefully I can hammer it through with the next few videos as they come out, so can understand a little bit more of my crazy brain storyline.
Yeah. Album's out October 24th. We're talking way ahead of its release. What's the plan for the band for the rest of this year?
So as we're like insane with our visuals, we are doing music video after music video. So we're on our 3rd music video. We're going to be doing 5 or 6. Okay. And since I direct and produce all of them and edit a lot of it, it literally is like takes up most of my month, is just like, pre-production, organizing, getting everybody on board with the shoot, doing the shoot, and then doing the special effects and editing at the end. So it's going to take up a lot of my time. And also this day and age with like social media content, it's like a full-time job, like making sure you have posts all the time going out. So that's going to be pretty intense. As far as playing live, we have had quite a crazy roller coaster this year with our drummers. Unfortunately, the day we were supposed to start practicing for this record, our drummer Joey got into a really bad car accident, which was really devastating for being, that literally he was missing for like a bunch of time. We didn't know where he was. And then we found him, he was in a coma, and it was like, it was like a really heavy time. So we kind of delayed the record a little bit, recording it and stuff. And then, but good news is Joey came back for a show that we just played in Switzerland. And the story behind that, I won't go into the whole thing, but it was insane because we literally left Toronto with a replacement drummer, not Joey, with a drummer that was just going to fill in for the Switzerland show.
Yeah.
By the time we got to Switzerland, he texted us to tell us he's turning around and going back home. So within less than like 12 hours notice, we had to ask Joey if he would be well enough after his accident to come fly to Switzerland. And so he did it, and he was like a hero to us because we literally were going to not be able to play the show the next day. We had like a ton of fans flew in. My parents flew in. It was like this huge big deal for the show. And so Joey came in and saved the day on that one. But he's still, in recovery. Like he still has a bunch of injuries that he can't fully
commit to being on the road.
Be on a tour full time and stuff. So we're still trying to figure out what we're going to do in that situation. But we definitely do want to tour this record. I'm assuming that it'll probably happen near the end, if not into next year, for touring it once the record is released. And we definitely want to come back to all our favorite spots. We miss the road. We love playing live, and we keep getting messages from people being like, when you come back? So we'll definitely be planning some stuff when the record drops.
You wanna go to outer space? Last chance to escape. Every day's a funeral, but the color scheme is not my taste. Stop holding me up to your standards, 'cause I would do a self-destruct.
I want to thank everyone who's out there listening. Thank you, Brian. I appreciate everyone spreading the word. It is so important to have support as independent acts. So it means the world to us. You guys just simply sharing something you think is cool, or heading over to the website. All the merch we have available, everything that we're going to be putting out the record is all just going to go support us and get us on the road and get us making more stuff. So every little bit counts, and thanks for listening, guys.